Welcome to another episode of Positive Solutions for Life. This is Peggy Meyer. Today's guest is David Amerland. David has authored several influential books on SEO, including Google Semantic Search. His work emphasizes the importance of context, relevance, and semantic connections in digital content strategies. By focusing on human-centric approaches, he has helped businesses adapt to the changing landscape of search and content marketing. Beyond SEO, David's writings often delve into the broader topics like decision-making, neuroscience, and the implications of artificial intelligence. Books like The Sniper Mind investigate the mental frameworks that lead to success in high-pressure environments, drawing parallels between military precision and business execution. A passionate martial artist, he is a certified Taekwondo instructor and holds a number of black belts in Taekwondo and karate. When he's not writing, he's training. Here to talk more about fitness than content marketing is David Amerland. So welcome to the podcast, David.
Peggy, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I am so looking forward to our conversation. If you were to talk about content marketing, it would go like kind of way over my head and I'd be just all confused. So I'm so glad we're talking a little bit more about fitness, something that I'm
Yes.
passionate about, and that a lot of topics kind of are around health and fit and wellness and fitness in my podcast. So I am looking forward to it. Can you start then the conversation by just telling a little bit more about you, your journey, and how does led to where you are today?
Well, where do I start from, right?
I don't know, wherever you
Well,
want to start. I mean, if you want to start way back or if you just want to like hit highlights.
well, I kind of been training all my life. I
Mhm,
started doing martial arts when I was 13. And I never thought I'd write a book on fitness because this is what I do,
mhm,
rather than something which I wanted to write about. And my career, I trained as a chemical engineer with a master's in quantum mechanics. I used that to go into search because of mathematics and branding and business intelligence and business analysis for a number of years. And my books have basically guided people in that frame.
mhm,
And usually, when we have a conversation about any kind of business, inevitably at some point, the conversation would shift onto health
mhm,
and the ability to do things, because that's the foundation of everything. If we don't feel well in who we are, we can't function as productive, contributory human beings.
mhm.
And that then affects everything else. So, my latest book, Build to Last, is essentially a trajectory, it takes us to the present from the past. But the thread there is always people and human behavior. And these are fundamental to us. So that's me in a nutshell. That's how I got to here.
Nice, nice. I mean, yeah, because really health, fitness, when we feel good, we really do a lot better. Our brain works better, we're in a
Yes.
better mood. We can, we want to do things, we want to exceed more, we want to challenge ourselves. And that goes through any aspect of our life, whether it's family, whether it's business, whether it's social relationships. So, what is it about fitness that can help people in business or in other areas of their life?
Well, we have a misconception, which is very broad, and it's kind of been reinforced by the fitness industry a little bit, products, films, popular culture. When we think of fitness as having a specific physical look, which comes with specific physical performance. And this has kind of blindsided us because we tend to try and emulate that. And we always feel we're failing. We haven't got enough time. We haven't got enough knowledge. We haven't got enough resources. So fitness for most people is a kind of on and on again, off again kind of approach where they're trying to chase that kind of externally received image. And
Mhm.
that's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, what we call fitness today is what life used to be like 10,000 years ago. And we know this from embedded anthropologists who have gone into to live for 6 to 9 months in the few remaining hunter-gatherer tribes that live around the world. And we know that their life, essentially, every day, they walk, they run, they climb, they dig, they sort of strike things, they're physically active as part of their life in order to survive. They need that. And when they don't have any of those things to do, they do nothing. They just hang around, they chat to each other, or they just basically rest and recover.
Mhm.
So fitness, essentially, what we think of fitness today really is trying to take some kind of exercise which is structured and put it in place for a lifestyle which doesn't exist anymore, which used to keep us healthy. And
Mhm.
essentially, that's what we want to be. We want to be healthy. We want to feel capable. As you said before, if you're feeling good inside yourself, then you are behaving well outside yourself.
Mhm.
You are connecting well with other people. You control your emotions. Your emotional regulation is good. You don't sort of overreact to situations. Your anger management is under control. All those things which make us a little bit difficult to deal with go away. So being fit inside ourselves is fundamental to then being fit and healthy and
Mhm.
happy outside ourselves.
Yeah. So fitness isn't necessarily this image of this perfect, kind of body. I would, perfect in the, quotes there because it's like it's changing, it's whatever you feel like that ideal look is. It's more about how capable you are in fulfilling what you want to fulfill in your life well. If you are, want more energy to play with kids, you want more energy to expand your business, if you want more energy to do fun things, you need to be fit in order to
Yes,
do that.
absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad you said energy because essentially the amount of energy we have available to us each day is finite. There's only so much we can actually do physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. All those things actually burn the same fuel that our muscles burn. So
Mhm.
if we get stressed, we burn ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. It's what powers our cells. Which is why if we're stressed, we don't feel like doing anything else because we're exhausted. If we are psychologically stressed, we again burn ATP.
Mhm.
If we're emotionally unbalanced, fighting with ourselves inside our head,
Mhm.
we burn ATP. If we push our muscles, if we lift things and dig and
Mhm.
lift weights or run or whatever, we burn ATP. So we only have so much energy to actually function each given day.
Mhm.
If we don't manage that energy through better emotional regulation, through better physical health,
Mhm.
through better psychological balance, then our energy is exhausted sometimes before we even start the day. And I
Yeah.
think we all know people like that, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, this little popped in my head, you had this little blib about artificial intelligence. And I'm like, so I have this Whoop thing, so a lot of people have different methods of tracking their,
Mm,
biological states, and so I'm
yes,
thinking, okay, so that's why like yesterday when I had this high stress, monitor thing, like you were in high stress zone a lot, you overexceeded that, you're probably gonna feel tired today. And I'm like,
yes,
yeah, okay, because that,
yeah,
like you're talking about, it burns the same stuff. Like it can be
yes,
mental stress. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. I went to my daughter's track meet. Sat around and stood around all day. And then I drove another kid to practice. Like I didn't technically do a lot of physical activity, but what you're saying is it doesn't have to be physical. It could be
no,
that
exactly.
mental or emotional stress.
Yes, exactly, exactly. That's a great point. Essentially, everything we do, every kind of function we experience, whether it's thinking, feeling, or doing,
Hmm.
burns the same amount of energy.
Hmm.
And we have a finite amount of energy to burn each day. So each day, to some degree, comes
Hmm.
down to making choices. Where am I going to allocate my energy? If, for example, let's say you wake up and you want to rage at the world for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Okay, you can rage at the world for 20 minutes. You burned up all that energy. Now you have less energy to do any physical stuff, less energy to devote to relationship building, less energy to devote to good, positive mood building, because all those things actually take energy. Everything that requires any kind of structure
Hmm.
inside ourselves is going to burn up fuel. And the fuel is ATP essentially.
Yeah.
So it will tire us out.
Right. Right. So what is like that something just popped in my head is like what's the importance then of routines? I'm like thinking of, decision fatigue. If you
Mhm.
have to, consciously make choices to, really focus and have intention, like we have this thing called decision fatigue, whether it's real or not, you burn up, your decision making skills and you run out of this, mental energy and then you don't want to make any more decisions the rest of the day. So
Yes.
how important is like routines for, getting fit for yourself, mentally, emotionally, physically,
Yes.
help with keeping that energy, maybe longer term or at least longer throughout
Yeah.
the day.
I'm so glad you brought this up. Okay, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to give you an example now from
Okay. Yeah,
marketing.
please.
You go through the supermarket, right? And you're saying to yourself, I'm going to be good today. I'm not going to buy any chocolates.
Yeah.
And throughout your shopping trip, because they move stuff around so you can see as many things to make you buy impulsively, you're fighting the sort of impulse to buy anything sweet. You say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And you get your shopping done and you have all these thoughts in your head. You're trying to plan your day and you get to the checkout. And what do you see at the checkout? Chocolates. Okay, what's happening there? You're going to reach for them because you're waiting now.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening. Throughout your trip, putting stuff in your trolley. You basically be making decisions, prioritizing, and also fighting your own impulse, which tells you, oh, I'd love something sweet today, but I promise myself I'm going to be good.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the checkout, you're exhausted, and now you stopped, right? You're not actually doing anything physical. You're waiting for your turn, while somebody else is getting served, and you got your trolley, and it's you can't fight it anymore.
Yeah.
So chances are, and it's significantly higher now, they're going to reach out, you're going to buy one chocolate bar thinking, it's just a chocolate bar. Okay, so this is how they get you, right?
Yep.
But this shows exactly, it sort of highlights the decision fatigue that you actually mentioned. Let's
Yeah.
take this to something more significant now, right?
Yeah.
Where we basically have to make a life-defining decision. And we make, along with that, we make all the other decisions around it. And we have, for better or worse, a chaotic life where every day is unexpected and we're fighting it. Okay, the chances that we're going to make a good decision are slim to none, simply because we're tired. So that comes down to routine now. What does routine do for us? Essentially, it lowers the energetic cost of our daily life to us. If you know what you're going to wear in the morning, you don't have to agonize over that. If you know what you're going to eat for breakfast, you don't have to sort of prepare it and think about it and all those things. If you pretty much know your route and you have picked the time to go to work or do whatever it is, so you don't have to battle the traffic, feel the anger inside, you feel the frustration which you have to tamper down afterwards. You don't have to do any of those things. You start your day with a higher amount of energy in your tank. So when it comes to your decisions, whether they're small or whether they're large, incrementally they're going to be better than decisions which would have been made in a chaotic environment. And better decisions over a lifetime essentially lead to a better life.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, I've been, asked, it's like, oh, how do you do it all? You've got 6 kids, you're running all over the place, how do you do it all? And, I don't think of my organizational skills as like a routine to help with my energy, but that's exactly what it is. And
Yes.
I'm also teaching my kids that, and so, to be more prepared and have more energy for the next day, how can you do that the night before? Like you said, know what you're going to wear. Like, I know exactly what I'm doing in the morning. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to put on my workout clothes, I'm going to do a workout and, get ready, and my kids are going to have breakfast, and, and it's kind of synchronized, but I don't have to think about it. And
Yes.
so then I have the energy to put towards something else that I want to succeed at, or, that will take up a little bit more energy.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the kind of strategy, life strategy, which isn't really taught to us. We have to work it out for ourselves. When you've done it, it's admirable and it allows you to lead a constructive, productive life, even though you have all these pressures and all these demands being made on you. Most people like that who have pressures being made us from the external world. We have all these sort of demands which are being made of our time. If we're not very good at sort of preserving our energy, managing it better, we end up sort of exhausting ourselves, and then we make bad decisions. Then we're in reactive mode because we can't think clearly. Those decisions lead to worse outcomes, which then we have to sort out. So we create problems for ourselves, and it goes on and on and on like that.
Right, right. And we talk about the external pressures, but we
Yes.
we add our own internal pressures to ourselves. So like
Absolutely.
I'm one of those that is, obviously organization is one of my key things, and planning ahead and all of those things. I can put a lot of extra stress on myself when I have a plan in place and a timeline in which to happen, and external things kind of interrupt, and I can make that switch really fast from, hey, I'm doing well, to, oh crap, all of this other stuff got landed on me. Now I'm not going to get it. And then blah, 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 blah. And it goes on, like, it just like increases the stress level. And everybody's just like, woo, like stay away. So it's a matter of both, right?
It is. And I'm so glad you mentioned this, you brought up this example, right? Our expectations trap us. If we are rigid in our approach, and we're rigid for many reasons. One of it is because we already are battling with a lot less energy than usual, and we don't feel capable of coping with things if they go off kilter. In my previous, not exactly previous, but the one before, my book before that, The Sniper Mind, it was basically, we used neuroscience to look at snipers while they're thinking, they're making critical decisions, and we drew a lot of elements from that, and we understood how the brain works under pressure. But from my interviews of over 100 snipers, this is what came out of it. Essentially, every plan they make, no matter how meticulous it is, no matter how highly trained they are, is going to go wrong. So instead of saying, oh my God, it's going wrong, that's it, mission over, I'm going back home, they essentially have a backup plan and then have a backup plan on top of that. So basically, throughout the obstacles that they face,
Mhm.
they have some kind of preparation to help them adjust.
Yeah.
And it's those incremental adjustments they make that allow them to be so efficient in what is essentially a chaotic environment. Most of the time, they're in war zones, they're under tremendous pressure, there are life and death situations, and every decision they make is actually looked at by legal teams back home for its judicial rightness or wrongness. So they can actually be prosecuted if they made the wrong decision in a war zone, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the pressure is incredible. And this is how they actually learn to operate. And if
Mhm.
we just take that away from them, if we
Mhm.
take that as a takeaway from the way we operate ourselves, we say,
Mhm.
okay, we set out to do something, we have some kind of expectation. We've planned everything meticulously. What if it doesn't go according to plan? Because we don't control the external world.
Right. Right.
Well, instead of going to pieces and thinking we are failures, we shouldn't be doing this and we can't deal with this, and oh my God, how am I going to survive? We should think, okay, this is my backup plan. And this is what will happen if the backup plan isn't quite right.
Right.
And that gives us essentially the ability to be adaptable
Mhm.
to what we face. And usually, if we are adaptable, we tend to overcome the obstacles and have positive outcomes.
Yeah, yeah. And so as you're talking, and I'm trying to apply that to my own life, right? And so it's like, okay, so I kind of do that. Like I call it more flexibility in that. So like if I have a timeline and it's like, okay, we've got to get out of the house because we've got to go somewhere and we got to get there at a certain time. We need to be leaving by, 8:30.
Okay.
Well, in my mind, I've already incorporated about a 15-minute window of
Okay.
extra time because I know me. It's like, I have intentions. I need to get out, but I really have to be out of the house by 8:30. So if I tell everybody, 8:30, I really probably is 8:45. I give myself a window.
Right.
So if I'm out of the house by 8:45, then I'm good because I've got that flexibility. So I feel like we build in processes to kind of
Mm.
help with that. And also there's a backup plan for me is just like, I remember I can ask for help. Like I can ask somebody to bring stuff to the car, even though I'm kind of a perfectionist and kind of feel like I can pack the car better. But, hey, it's in the car, right? Like it's okay if it's not exactly where I thought I was going to put it. So flexibility, asking for, some help with that, but also like giving yourself grace, right? Like
Yes,
give yourself a plan.
absolutely. Yes.
Something is going
And
to mess up. Something, it's not going to go exactly as
yeah,
planned. So just know it's going to, be some hurdles to go over.
exactly. And we know from, again, from studies now, we know how the brain operates in these situations. If we have an expectation which is rigid and we're sort of kind of really wedded to that,
Mhm.
and it will go wrong inevitably, right? Because things never go according to, perfectly according to plan.
Yeah.
So then what happens in our head, we tend to feel anxiety and we tend to feel stress. So our cortisol levels rise, our sort of all different hormones which put our system on alert rise, and our brain begins to sense a threat because it doesn't understand this is just a stressful situation.
Right.
Okay, it feels that signals coming in, so we're in danger. Brain has very ancient mechanisms, so then it begins to panic,
Mhm.
and it begins to look where should it allocate resources. And this is what it actually does. As soon as the panic level inside us, the pressure inside us,
Mhm.
reaches a particular threshold, the brain removes resources from the higher centers of the brain, which we use for analytical thinking and emotional regulation, because they're energy intensive.
Mhm.
And it puts them in major organs like heart and lungs, respiration, our voice. And, we're just ready for action. And what happens usually? We tend to yell at somebody because we lose our temper.
Yeah.
Like things are 5 minutes late. You say, we told you before, and we
Yeah.
explode and things. And of course, then we feel guilty, right? So we feel the toxicity inside us rises even more in a
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
self-reinforcing loop.
Yeah.
So then we tend to go even worse because now we feel guilty and ashamed and also angry, and we shouldn't be in that situation. And all this is usually directed towards the outside world. So we tend to wreck any kind of context where we are
Yeah.
active in that situation. We lost control of ourselves. We
Mhm.
tend to wreck relationships. We tend to wreck business deals, whatever it is
Yeah.
we're actually
Yeah.
trying to do.
Yeah.
So that overreaction has the opposite effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember, years of counseling clients. I was just like, they'd have this like, I just blow up at somebody. And I'm like, well, yeah, you get to a certain point where you're all stressed out. That part of your brain just turns off. Like there's this, it clicks off and all you do is the reaction mode. And it's just like, blah. I mean, you're just vomiting all over people as far as like your emotions and your voice and all of that just gets spills out. And you're like, I didn't want to do that. But, it just your brain gets hijacked when you get
It
overly.
does, yeah, yeah. I mean, to be fair, it's an ancient mechanism that's there to protect us. In the past, they would have ensured our survival.
Yeah.
And the problem today is that the world is complex.
Mhm.
There are a lot of signals we receive from the external world.
Mhm.
When we fail to process them adequately, either because we're not looking out for them, we don't understand our own triggers, or perhaps we're just overloaded, we haven't got the ability to be self-aware, and
Mhm.
these are things we can train,
Yeah.
then they tend to overwhelm us. And when we are overwhelmed, well, our body senses, our brain senses a threat. It
Yeah.
goes into survival mode, it overreacts, things are going to go wrong.
Yeah.
So it's always better to actually try and build in that margin, try and manage our energy better on a daily basis. It gives us a habit of being level-headed, essentially. It
Mhm.
gives us the ability to think clearly. And if we think clearly, then with the same facts on the ground, because the facts don't change,
Right.
we can see avenues of action which were not available to us before because
Mhm.
we didn't have the critical thinking faculty in
Right.
effect.
Right. So we kind of need to like get aware of how we're responding and find
Yes.
ways to, get back into regulation, breathing,
Decompress. Yeah.
yeah, to be able to think more clearly, to respond appropriately, like the way we want to, and be able to find the different options and choices that we have. And
Yes.
oftentimes
Yes.
it requires a different perspective, and we can't do it if we're just kind of like in this zone of everything's crap, like,
Absolutely. If we feel the world is crushing us, we feel crushed.
yeah,
So
yeah,
essentially, we need a change of perspective. And
right.
again, from the sniper mind directly, people in a war, in a battle zone, where all sorts of things are happening, and every decision they make is pretty much life or death.
Mhm.
They get tired. Their brain, their decision making becomes fatigued. They understand that. They have to their credit, they have developed the self-awareness to realize that. And in the middle of essentially a battle, they can take a break. They look around, take a deep breath, touch the ground, smell their hand, and that allows their brain to essentially change perspective.
Mhm.
It lowers the anxiety level inside them and replenishes the chemical resources they need for critical thinking because they get well, not exhausted completely, but they get sort of depleted.
Yeah.
So if they can do it in the middle of a battle, I'm sure we can do it in a daily life, right? We don't face the same life or death thing. I
Yeah.
think maybe because we don't face life or death, we give ourselves the slack of overreacting
Mhm.
and misbehaving, thinking that it's going to be okay. And I think it's never okay.
Right. And we can tend to like push through. If it's not life or death, this is like they're you just kind of tend to push through. But what I heard out of that sniper example is really refocusing and on
Mm.
like basically your five senses. I mean,
Yes.
looking around, you know, hearing what else is going on, touching the ground,
Mm.
smelling your hand, basically just take back like your focus, like go
Yes.
back in and embrace all of your senses, and then you're just basically refocused and reframed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think the situation that you described before, you're trying to get out of the house, and all those sorts of things are happening. You're working against the clock, and you feel that it's not going to happen, and you feel the pressure building up. And if you just take a moment, take a step back, go outside, look around, take a deep breath,
Mhm.
and think, this is all manageable, right?
Yeah,
And suddenly it doesn't seem so bad.
right.
As you said, it gives you a different perspective.
Yeah.
It lowers the pressure which you feel inside you. It brings us back to your earlier comment about expectations in
Mhm.
ourselves,
Mhm.
building up our pressure. Stress is always definitely we receive stress from the external world because there are constant signals coming to us. But essentially, the stress that we feel is always self-created. It's how we process those signals.
Yeah, I was kind of self-inflicted. Like,
Yes.
how many times do I self-inflict myself with a bunch of stress? And, the choices that I make have consequences. And some of them are good, and some of them aren't so good. And it's, we have to take a look, and that's that awareness piece, I really feel like. So
Yes.
I want
Yes.
to circle
Absolutely.
back. I want to circle
Mm.
back and can you talk, mentioned your newest book, Built to Last. Can
Yes.
you tell a little bit more about that? I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Build to Last is a blueprint on how we can become fitter, healthier, more stable in our life, planning for longevity as we age so we don't actually lose the ability to control our body and enjoy our life, feel happier. And rather than being very prescriptive, I brought in a lot of science. I looked again at neuroscience and psychology, anthropological studies, and what the latest sort of behavioral studies show us. And it's almost like a key to understand better our own operating system. It's what you said earlier. And if you have a life which is like this, you have two choices. Choice number one, live it as you can. So from moment to moment, you're being reactive to your life and you get through it as best as you can. It's chaotic and it doesn't always feel great.
Mhm.
Or choice number two, you say to yourself, well, how can I structure it so it becomes better for me and then better for everybody else around me? Well, fitness is no different. It's there to actually make us feel good about how we relate to our body, how then that body helps our brain. And then we know that essentially brain and body are indivisible. We can't sort of train one without training the
Right,
other.
right.
So everything which we do physically affects our mental health. Everything that we think and how we perceive the world affects our physical health. I've got lots of examples there in science to actually help us understand how that impacts on us.
Mhm.
But that's what it is. It's like if you say to yourself, I don't know, I'm at this age now. Where do I want to be 20, 30 years from now?
Mhm.
Well, the journey starts now, this moment, because that 20, 30-year-old self is not just going to happen. You have to start building it now.
Yeah.
But there's no single prescription that I can give anybody to actually follow because everybody's unique.
Mhm.
Your circumstances are going to be unique. Your accessibility of resources is going to be unique to you.
Mhm.
Your knowledge and experience and memories, everything that makes you you is going to be specific to you.
Mhm.
So really the book is there to help you understand, okay, this is what I have. How do I make this work for me?
Mhm.
So that's how it's actually structured.
Yeah, and so it's really meant for anybody because you're really taking a look at your unique capabilities, your brain structure, what works for you, because really we are the expert of ourselves. Like nobody knows us better. So that's why in the fitness, health, and wellness world, there's so many different avenues to go. There's so many diets, there's so many exercise programs, and you can say, oh yeah, that one's going to work. Oh, I would never do that one. You can pick and choose all of those, but really you have to first learn yourself. And is that
Yes,
kind of like how that blueprint of that book, right? Is just like learning about
exactly.
yourself. And here's kind of a general, I don't want to say general because I don't want to think, but it's a scientific based how to do this for yourself.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're 100% correct. The only expert on us is us. Only we know how we feel.
Mhm.
And really, once we begin to understand why we feel that way, then we are in a better place. And we're unique in this, in the animal kingdom. We're the only animals that can actually restructure ourselves from the inside out. And we can't change physically if we don't change mentally. So if we want to be stronger, fitter, healthier, for whatever reason, and whatever image we're chasing for us,
Right,
if
right.
we don't change our thinking, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
This is the reason, for example, that many fad diets don't work. This is
Mhm.
the reason why fad training doesn't work, because we chase it intellectually,
Mhm.
but then we fail to make the emotional connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the emotional connection comes down to us. You
Yeah.
say, okay, how do you work out your life? Or how do you work out your fitness? Or how do you work out your business? Well, all these things have one thing in common. If you don't know who you are, then you don't know why you're doing the things you do.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you want to start a business? Sure, you need to know who you are, what's important to you, what are your values, what are you actually trying to accomplish? And you can't say I'm making money because we all need money.
Yeah.
Every business is there to do that.
Yeah.
Same thing with life. You can't say I'm trying to live my life. We're all trying to live our life. But in order to have a life that's meaningful for us, you need to understand who are you really. And there are sort of very step-by-step exercises in the book to help you do that.
Mhm.
And then you have to understand why you do those things. And we all have our own reasons for doing the things that we do.
Right. Right. We need clarity of the vision. Like, who do we want to be? We have to be really clear about that. It's like, oh, I want to be healthier. Well, what does that mean? Like, I want to be
Yes.
fitter. What does that mean? Like, okay, I want to be able to like run around. I want to be able to hike, I want to be able to without, feeling exhausted. I want to be able to, keep up. I really want to stay very active and be able to do all these things as I age, get into the grandmahood, I want to be that fun grandma, and I want to be able to do all those things. But I also, know that that's not going to be the end all, it'll change, but I also need why. Why is that important? I can have that vision. I want to be that active, but why? And we have to really kind of keep asking ourselves that
Mm.
because our first why is just kind of superficial, right? Like we have to like dig under. Like I ask my kids, okay, when they ask me a question, I usually come back, what's underneath that question? Like there's something underneath there that you really want to ask, but you're asking this first. Is that kind of like we have to unlayer ourselves to really lock it in?
Absolutely, yes. I know I love the example you brought up with kids because there's always an intent behind their question.
Yes.
Okay. And you need to understand the intent in order for you to actually give them an answer that's
Mhm.
meaningful as opposed to just, being performative and answering their question at face value.
Yeah.
And as a parent, you're taking the responsible approach. You dig deeper. You say, okay, why did you ask that? What is it you really want to know? And I'll
Mhm.
tell you what you want to know once I understand what
Right.
it is and why you want it. It's the same thing. We have to be the parent of ourselves in
Yeah.
our life. We have to say, okay, I mean, why do you want a six pack, for instance, if that's what you want?
Right.
Why do you want to, I don't know, at age 80, you want to be able to run and lift and do whatever it is you want?
Mhm.
Why is that important to you? If we understand the why, as you said, here's what happens. We are able to essentially prioritize our choices and our actions
Mhm.
in order to get there
Yeah.
because we understand it better. We understand the value. And
Mhm.
then the priorities become clearer.
Mhm.
There's the old saying that it says, if you don't know where you're going, all roads will take you there. And essentially means that you can't prioritize because you don't know where you're going. You're
Right.
going. So which road are you going to take? They all have the same value.
Yeah.
But if you know where you're going, even if it's a general direction, immediately you begin to make some serious choices. You begin to reject some choices, you begin to say no to this, and you begin to say yes to that.
Yeah.
And then the moment you say yes to that, the consequence of that is what is it involved? What is the cost going to be to me?
Mhm.
Then you begin to understand it better. Then you are better prepared for what's going to come.
Right.
So you're more committed.
Yeah.
So, these are, starting from those small who
Mhm.
and why,
Yeah.
we suddenly get into, how to live our lives, how to behave as people, how to be better humans, which is
Right.
amazing when you come to think about it.
Yeah, yeah, because I think I hope we're all striving to be better humans in this world. This is
We,
awesome.
we are, generally speaking, we all want to be
Yes.
that. I think for because it's energetically expensive, let's actually address that.
Yeah, yeah.
To ask yourself who is difficult
Mhm.
because the answers you may get may make you feel uncomfortable. To ask yourself why you do some things is also difficult.
Mhm.
So you need to be prepared for the energetic cost of actually working out your own operating system. Why are you the way you are? What trauma led you to that point? What experiences contributed to that? And how are you going to evolve from that point onward?
Yeah.
For many, many years, many of us were quite willing because it's easier to accept a label that the
Mhm.
external world attaches to us,
Mhm.
and then the job description that goes with that label: wife, husband, mother, child, whatever it is,
Yeah.
engineer, scientist,
Yeah.
worker, factory worker. There are certain expectations, and we sort of lived down to expectation, if you like,
Mhm.
because it was easier.
Mhm.
I think in the 21st century, we begin to understand this is not enough, certainly for our mental health. So
Mhm.
we're actually beginning to talk about mental health
Yeah.
more openly
Yeah.
and discuss, what is it that we need in order to be better, to grow and help other people grow.
Mhm.
And certainly the pandemic was a big wake-up call for many people because we found ourselves cut off from our social circles, cut off from the expectations of the external world.
Mhm.
And for many people, that meant that they no longer knew how to behave
Yeah.
because the guidelines were
Yeah.
not there anymore.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
had to work it out for themselves.
Yeah.
So we're in this journey now in the 21st century where we are beginning to ask these very difficult questions
Mhm.
to which the answers are not always evident. And we're trying to work out, okay, how can we be better? How can we create a better world? How can we create better societies? How can we contribute in small ways or in big ways? It really doesn't matter. How can we contribute to that kind
Right.
of structure that's desirable?
Right. And what I'm hearing and what I'm getting is just like it takes energy. So it's not going to be like this simple answer you can answer in like 5 seconds. Like you have to sit down and let it permeate and kind of like, for a few days maybe, or even longer, is because if we're not in tune to ourselves, like this isn't a quick answer. So to really get down to who you are and why you're doing what you're doing and why you want to do what you do, that's going to take a little bit of time, but it's
Absolutely.
well worth it in the
Mm.
long run for your energy and your health and your fitness level.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier mental clarity,
Mhm.
and essentially that's what it is. I mean,
Mhm.
um, in my last book, Intentional, I basically said that, if we all knew how to behave in every context, would be perfect.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the problems we face is because we don't know how to behave. And then you ask, well, why don't we? And the answer to that is, how should we? There's no manual.
Right.
So we have to work it out. And we're
Mhm.
imperfect. We have insecurities and we have assumptions and we have stress, which overtakes us, and we have wrong reactions and we go into panic mode. So basically, we behave wrongly in environments and they create all sorts of problems for us, which we then need to deal with and their
Right.
aftermath. So having mental clarity helps us resolve most of those things. It
Mhm.
helps us prioritize better. It helps us understand better what's happening. It helps us understand better how who we are and where we're going
Mhm.
fits into the context of that situation. And
Mhm.
that includes everything, includes life and business, fitness, certainly,
Right.
all those things.
Right.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh. David, we could talk for hours. I'm like, this topic is
it's,
obviously
it's a good
passionate for
talk.
both of us. But as listeners hear more about you and all of, oh my gosh, how you explain things and your background and the science you put in it, the neuroscience, oh my gosh, how can they find out more about you, some of the books that you've written, any of that?
Well, you'll find me at davidamerland.com. I put out a lot of stuff that I come across there on my blog and essentially write about a lot of things and connect as many dots as possible. And if you Google me, you'll find all my socials. And again, I put a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, great, great. I'll put some of that in the show notes so people can easily just, click on that and you do that and get
Thank
to
you.
know a little bit more about all of that, the workings, inner workings of David's mind and how he connects the dots, because I think we need more of those people with us to, that's just one of those shortcuts for me is like, I gotta find people like David and connect the dots and it's like, makes the sense. So go out and check him out. So David, as we wrap up today, is there anything, a thought, quote, or anything that we've left kind of uncovered that you really feel like the listeners need to hear today?
Yeah, I'll say that living is difficult for everybody. People have this assumption that it should be easy, and it isn't. And living well is even harder. So by doing that hard work ourselves, by trying to better understand our own motivation, the consequences of our actions, and also the motivation for those actions, we actually make our life easier. And I think we all deserve that.
Yeah. Yeah. And who doesn't want to make your life easier, right? Like, come on. So go out, check out some of David's books, check out his blog, check out just get a little bit more so you can learn more about how you operate so that you can make better choices and you can start living a better life. So thank you so much, David.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really enjoyed this talk.
Oh, so did I. Thank you so much, David.